Hello and welcome to Unacademy. I welcome you all to this Conquer Prelims session. As you know, the purpose of this session is to understand static topics and understand them in such a way that we are able to apply them in MCQs. So, I have 3 sessions under Conquer Prelims Part 2, which is the static portion. Today, I'll be discussing ancient medieval history. I'll be discussing 8 to 9 important topics which are important because of the previous year questions. After analyzing the previous year questions, after analyzing everything, I've been able to identify 4 to 5 very critical topics and 5 to 6 topics which are subsidiary to them. I have also questions on them so that you can evaluate your understanding here itself. In the second session, I'll meet you for modern India, and the last session I will discuss art and culture. So therefore, today we will be discussing high yielding areas of ancient and medieval. Then we'll discuss modern India, and thereafter we will discuss art and culture. The questions which I've given here, the answers to this question I will give you in the next session. The first thing I will do in the modern session is discuss the answers of the questions which I've given here, and the same will be done for art and culture session. However, art and culture session I will give you the answers in the end of the session itself. It's a 3-day journey with me, and the idea is all the static portions I will cover in a most comprehensive manner in a revision format so that you can just revise everything. I presume that you're giving the examination in 2025. Therefore, you have already done these topics. So I will be comprehensive for revision and so that you can just evaluate your preparation also in that regard. Now, before we begin, remember that on 23rd of February, we have the UCSC test. You can use the UCSC test to evaluate your preparation, but also join our family at a very discounted price. I hope that you will register for it. The link is given in the description box and you will become part of the UCSC, which is the Unacademy scholarship test. Now, you will find the PPT of this session in this Telegram channel. Just go into this Telegram channel, subscribe to it. You will get everything. Now, first, we will cover ancient. Now, in ancient, looking at the previous year questions, Indus Valley Civilization, Buddhism, Jainism are 3 critical areas which repeat themselves, which are high yielding and are generally important. So, what I will do is I'll give you the overview of Indus Valley Civilization. I'll discuss the basic ideas here with you. Again, it is not for learning purpose, it is for revision purpose. And then I will give you a question to check, have you understood everything which I've taught you? Now, when we talk about the Indus Valley Civilization or the Indus-Saraswati zone as it is called today, it's an area which UPSC tends to ask questions either in factual manner or in statement based, in a comparative perspective with other ages also or periods also. But this period of 3200 to 2600, which is the early BCE, thereafter 2600 to the period of 1700 BCE, and which is the mature phase, the most important phase. And thereafter 1700 to the period of 1500 BCE. Sometimes here 1900 is also used, here 1900 is also used. This is the period of decline. This civilization is considered to be the first urbanization. That is why UPSC has a certain obsession with it, because it is the period in which trade will develop, a proper mature polity will be there, and it exhibited a lot of qualities which are today considered to be modern and urban. Now, the first topic which you have to understand within this is that Indus Valley Civilization was found as a chance discovery. In 1826, Charles Mason, a East India Company surveyor, was going through what is called today the Harappa sector and saw a mount, and when he saw the tools in and around it, he was able to identify that the tools did not correspond to the period in which he was in. And therefore, thereafter the Archaeological Survey of India will be established, and Alexander Cunningham is the one who will systematically conduct the survey of the Harappan site, thereafter Mohenjo-daro, and thereafter we will have Kalibangan, Chanudaro, Kotadizzi, all these important sites being discovered. And by 1924, John Marshall, the second DG, Alexander Cunningham being the first one, the second DG will then tell the world that we have found something called the Indus Valley Civilization, a Bronze Age civilization located in the what we call today northwestern sector of India. Now, 2 things should be very, very clear. Indus Valley Civilization is a Chalcolithic civilization, meaning it has copper plus stone, and it is also Bronze Age, meaning within Chalcolithic it is bronze because they were able to create the alloy of copper, which is bronze. There was no use of iron anywhere though we are finding some sources, some references on the upper layers of Lothal, but that would only mean in the later periods. But for the pure IVC, when we talk about the standardization and everything else, we do not find any iron. It's not an Iron Age civilization. First point to be noted. Thereafter, if we look at the location, you should also know that they were not able to move into what is today called as the Indo-Gangetic Plain or the Doab region, because with lack of iron, you do not have very heavy access. Therefore, the clearing of these forests, the marshy area could not have been done. Therefore, it is concentrated in today's Pakistan, Afghanistan and northwestern India sector, and you have all these important sites out of the NCERT which you should know, because they have asked a question, which of the following sites is not a Harappan site. So therefore, you should know which of the following are Harappan sites. So the standard Manda, for example, Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Amri, Dholavira, the only UNESCO World Heritage Site, Rangpur, Lothal, Nageshwar, Sutka Gandor, very important one. Sutka Gandor, the westernmost, Manda, the northernmost. Then you have Alamgirpur and Daimabad, Alamgirpur being the easternmost and Daimabad being the southernmost. You should know this. But because this map is not comprehensive enough, I also have the Upinder Singh map in which all the sites are given. You should have a basic memory of these sites, because there will be questions based on the site somewhere or the other. So you should be able to identify at least the north, south, east, west extremities, and you should also be able to know the basic name. For example, Ganeriwala is an important site, very big site in that regard. You should be able to, for example, identify Sutka Gandor on the map. If you are preparing for UPSC, you should know where Banavali is, where Kalibangan is, the old course of the Saraswati river, which is now Gagar Hakkar river. So these are things. Spatial awareness with regards to this topic is important. But there are also other heads under which questions come. The first one being town planning, then you have economy and trade, polity, writing, decline and religion. Writing has been in the news because of what the Tamil Nadu Chief Minister has argued. Town planning, there are 4 to 5 points which I want you to know. First, citadel, lower town complex concept, which is that the administrative public buildings were on the citadel and lower town is the residential area. You should know that there were streets at 90 degrees, drainage and sewage system were separated, sometimes also enclosed. Further, we see that the houses did not have gates towards the street but into side roads. 2-story buildings, toilets were everywhere, very good water management, very good drain management and sewage management, and over and above that, standardization. 1:2:4 bricks when it comes to the house bricks or the city bricks in that regard. And one of the most important feature, which is the idea that all of these sites show uniformity in these aspects, other than, for example, Banavali, which has a radial pattern, all have a grid pattern. Further, you can have an enclosed or a fortified settlement, a non-enclosed one also. Big sites are also there, small sites are also there, rural, urban. Basically, it is considered to be urban or modern because of these features, all of which we today use in town planning. This is an area which will help you in art and culture also, because these are the features of architecture. When we talk about economy and trade, it is the first time in the Indian subcontinent that a pure civilization such as the Indus Valley civilization, a proper civilization in that regard, was connected to its contemporaries, for example, in Mesopotamia, Dilmun in the Omanian Peninsula, or in the Sinai Peninsula as it is called. Further, it was connected to the Afghanistan sector, and a proper trade route developed. The Harappans were exporting lapis lazuli, for example, cats, dogs, monkeys. They were also actually exporting a lot of the precious stones. They were exporting timber also. On the other hand, they were getting pottery from the Mesopotamians, from the Afghanistan sector, from the Sinai Peninsula. So therefore, trade, both internal, external, internally for raw material, externally for basic trade, was very well developed, but barter system, no currency, and purely based on exchange of goods. When we talk about polity, we know that it's a mature polity because it is very well established. There is a lot of standardization, uniformity, but we don't know one thing, which is what is the nature of the polity, which is, are priests controlling it, merchants controlling it, or someone else is controlling it? That is not there. Therefore, we don't know who is controlling the power, but looking at the grade bar, looking at the granaries, looking at the standardization across this whole sector, it seems that it is a mature civilization. With regards to writing, Vostrophenden is the word which is used for the way they write. However, Harappan writing remains an enigma. There's a 1 million cash prize also available if you are able to figure that out. But because of multiplicity of symbols, the problems with the sub-categorization, meaning is it a language, is it just a symbol system, what is the meaning of that, no Rosetta Stone, no comparative perspective being there. Writing is something which makes no sense whatsoever to anyone, and therefore that remains an enigma. The undeciphered nature of the script and the language, which we also don't know, remains a problem for understanding IVC. When we talk about religion, naturalistic religion, worshipping nature, worshipping the trees, sun, moon, we also have male and female god and goddesses with regards to the mother goddess figure, the Pashupati seal, and we also find early yogic and unique positions in that regard. Therefore, there is some form of religion for sure. Again, the nature is not properly established, no temples whatsoever, not properly institutionalized religion, but some form of cultic understanding is there for sure. With regards to decline, there's a long drawn controversy with regards to the Aryan invasion. Aryan migration is accepted, but that is also been now challenged with regards to the iron which is coming from the southern sector. Sanoli and Rakhigarhi have also in a way complicated that understanding, but till it is not properly established. We believe that Aryan migration, be it inward or outward, did happen. Further, it was most probably desiccation, lack of water, flooding, meaning ecological factors which in turn declined the civilization over 200 years. Most probably IVC people and the Vedic people interacted with one another, which is also in a way confirmed by what today is called the Rakhigarhi DNA, wherein we have found, in us you will find both IVC and Vedic or Aryan DNA per se. So therefore, IVC has a lot of different contours, but you have to concentrate on trade and economy because that is very well defined. You have to concentrate on town planning, and you also have to concentrate on religion, where we have a lot of clarity. Decline, origin and writing are things which we still have to figure out, and therefore in the examination most questions revolve around these only, because any other question will not be definitive or only plausible in that regard. Now, how will UPSC ask a question? They can give you questions such as this, which is, consider the following statements with regards to the Indus Valley civilization. Copper, bronze, iron was extensively used in the internal craft specialization and production. There was extensive trade connections with the East Asian world, particularly the Mesopotamian civilization. Lapis lazuli, carnelian, gold and silver were imported from Nippur and Ur for jewelry production. Which of these statements are correct? The answer to this question I want in the comment section. And tomorrow when we meet, we will discuss the answer to this question, what is the right answer, but I hope you'll be able to identify. Read closely, important. But in the comment section, I want all the answers. I will show everybody who has got the answers correct also. Thereafter, the second high yielding area is Buddhism, Jainism, meaning more Buddhism, less Jainism, but Buddhism, Jainism is considered generally an important concept. Again, a very big topic to be covered within an hour and a half. But I'll again try to give you a basic understanding of Buddhism, Jainism, basic terminologies which you may expect in the examination. Though Buddhist literature, Jain literature always becomes a problem for UPSC aspirants with regards to the nature of what we call as small details which comes through. For example, Shakyamuni concept which came this year 2024 was something which is again not expected from UPSC, but they can play with that idea. Now, first question with regards to Buddhism, Jainism is, why did they rise? So there are 2 to 3 very important concepts, which is the frustration. The Vedic Brahmanism, which is one of the first religions which developed in the later Vedic period, was sacrificial, was based on rituals, was, you can say, too ritual centric, expensive. The frustration was there in both the second and the third Varna. Kshatriyas were not very happy because they were always having the second position, but they were holding power. Ritualistically, they were second to the Brahmins. They were holding a lot of power in the forms of the monarchies and the Gana Sanghas, but still were not able to have social mobility. That is how the rigid 4-4 Varna structure works. The Vaishyas, on the other hand, were very, very frustrated because they had wealth, but again, the third rank in the ritualistic supremacy. Therefore, these two classes became the 2 most important audiences for Buddhism, Jainism. That is why merchant class and Kshatriyas were the most, you can say, patronized, or the Buddhist and Jains mostly patronized these sections, which is Kshatriyas and Vaishyas, Vaishyas being the most important. Second is the idea related to morality, which is given by Buddhism, Jainism itself, that there was a need for a better outlook, a better path to salvation or moksha. That is the basic idea here. We are caught up in a cycle of birth and rebirth. Our soul in that regard is caught up into that. What we want is in Vedic Brahmanism, through ritualistic merit, punya, you can basically get moksha. However, they wanted to give a more egalitarian, simple and straightforward path to moksha, and that is where Buddhism, Jainism were alternative paths, new religions, because there was moral decline, there was what we call today as economic prosperity brought in a issue of corruption of morality. So the idea of materialism is also something centric to the rise of Buddhism and Jainism. This was the first aspect. The second is specific stories related to Buddhism, Jainism. When we talk about Buddhism first, we know that the Jataks and the Buddhist literature tell us about Siddhartha, who becomes Buddha through the process of looking at 4 very important things. When he was born with 32 symbols which told him that he will be, or the priest said that he would be either a world renunciator or a world conqueror. His father, coming from a Kshatriya clan, would want him to be a world conqueror. So therefore, his father kept him in all of comfort, but he still was not happy. He saw a corpse, he saw a sick man and an old man, and saw that money does not stop death, does not stop disease, and actually does not stop the process of aging. Answer is salvation, moksha, nirvana, through the 4th thing which he saw, which is renunciation. When he joined 5 ascetics, the problem was that he was not able to concentrate in meditation because they asked him to give a food also. And this is where Sujata comes into the picture. She gave kheer or milk rice to eat to Buddha, thinking that he was a forest god. He will eat it. He will then basically get that urge to meditate. With that meditation, what will happen is Mara is going to try to tempt him to come out of that meditation. He will finally get his enlightenment, the 4 noble truths and the 8-fold path. That moment is called Dharma Chakra Parivartana, the moving or the turning of the wheel of Dhamma or Dharma. And from that point till his death, he will propagate the idea of the Atriya Sachais, the 4 noble truths, and the 8-fold path. Let's discuss that concept in that regard. So the 3 jewels of Buddhism is Buddha, Buddha's teaching, and the monastic order which he will produce in the later stages, which is called the Sangha. Sangha is going to, after his death, go through certain councils. We will discuss that. But the idea is Sangha is going to make Buddhism an institutionalized religion. Now, the 4 noble truths revolve around the fact that there is dukh, there is sorrow, there is a cause for that sorrow. With that sorrow will come a cause, therefore it can also be removed, and how it is removed is through the 8-fold path. Now the 8-fold path is also very interesting, wherein if you follow the following 8 aspects in your life, you will get salvation, nirvana. You should have the right view, you should have the right intention, speech and action, visa, VISA, which is view, intention, speech and action. Thereafter, you should have the right livelihood, effort, mindfulness and meditative position, which is samadhi. Together, if you follow these 8 aspects, you will be able to get a certain path which will lead you to salvation, coming out of the cycle of birth and rebirth. Now, these are things which you should know by now, or you should generally know, because these are standard things related to Buddhism. However, before we go to Jainism, you also have to know things which are related to the concept of the councils, because councils do come in the examination quite a lot. So when we talk about Buddhism, till the point Buddha was alive, he did not create an institutionalized religion. However, once he died, the Sangha met 4 times, and I'll give you a flowchart to summarize those councils. In the first Buddhist council, the factual part can be remembered separately. Who was the place, where was it, 486 BC, this and that can be discussed later. But what is more important is what is the product, which is what was produced in the first, second, third and fourth Buddhist council as a form of revision, as we are trying to do. When we talk about the first Buddhist council, 2 books will be produced, which is Sutta and Vinay. These are called the Pitakas, or the books, together called the 3 Pitakas. After Abhidhamma will be written in the third Buddhist council. First Buddhist council, you will have Sutta, Vinay, Pitak. Sutta is the teachings of Buddha, what he said. Vinay is the rule book for monks to become what is called today as a Buddhist monk, or you want to be an Upasak or Upasika, which is a follower of Buddhism, you need rules and regulations. Now, Vinay established that. However, what will happen is in the 100 years between the first and the second Buddhist council, questions will be raised that is Vinay Pitak too difficult? And this is where, when the second Buddhist council will meet, there will be two different strands which will develop within the Sangha. One is called the Theravada or Theravadin, and second is called the Mahasangika. Mahasangika is going to say that we should dilute the Vinay Pitak. Theravada is going to say we shouldn't. This is where the first split of Buddhism is going to happen to produce the oldest school of Buddhism, which is Theravada. Thereafter, Mahasangika will reduce the severity of the rules in that regard, and Mahasangika will go forward as the most important body for Buddhism. However, because nobody was really able to understand or establish what Buddha said properly, so the third Buddhist council, which was also held by Ashoka in that regard, the third book of the Pitaks is going to be established, which is called or written, which is called the Abhidhamma Pitak. This is a book which will tell you the philosophy of Buddhism. It will interpret Sutta Pitak for you in that regard. This will create the canonical text of Buddhism in that regard. However, again, over who was Buddha, there were new types of understandings developing. And that will happen. So remember, Theravada goes out of the picture. It is Mahasangika which goes for the third Buddhist council. And at the fourth Buddhist council, which happened under Kanishka, there is now going to be a major split over the issue of who is Buddha. One faction will say that Buddha is God, which is the Mahayanic Buddhist council. They will basically base themselves on bodhisattvas. The idea, for example, Avalokeshwar, Manjushri, Vajrapani, Tara, Kanda, and they will say that Buddha is God. We should worship him in the form of God itself. In the other way, which is idol worship, and the other path is going to be Hinayanic Buddhism, which is going to be established as a way of saying Buddha is a good teacher, not God himself, and therefore we should listen to what he says, not worship him, but his symbols. And this is where Hinayanic Buddhism is not based on bodhisattvas, but on symbols of Buddha. Bodhisattvas, deification of Buddha, all related to Mahayanic Buddhism. Mahayanic Buddhism will further evolve into when Tantricism and the Hindu practices will start to come through into what is today called as Vajrayanic Buddhism, the latest of all schools, which is Tantra Mantra to get salvation. So now you have to remember one thing. In the odd numbers, books are written, odd number councils, and in the even numbers, splits happen. Theravada, Mahasangika, then Mahasangika becoming Mahayanic, Hinayanic, and the evolution of Mahayanic into Vajrayanic. Buddha is God, Buddha is a good teacher. What is the point of meditation? To Tara, they wanted to do Tantra Mantra and get salvation in that regard. This is basically a very important set of understanding. I've tried to again encapsulate it in this way of revision in that regard. And I hope that you remember now what is the basic pattern. Buddhism has one problem. Buddha said that there is no soul, but he talks about transmigration of life energy. He also talks about one more thing, which is that if you say that there is no soul, then how will the Jataks actually exist? Because which is the past lives of Buddha. That is where they say that karma transfers, life energy transfers. So in a way, they have a very distorted understanding of the concept of soul. They also initially did not believe in God. Later, Buddha himself was made into God. That is again one of the problems of Buddhism in that regard. Now, vis-a-vis understanding this in the concept of Jainism, Jainism is a very difficult, you can say, religion to follow because Buddhism is open and flexible with most of the things in that sense. When we talk about Jainism per se, Jainism is based on the concept of Tirthankaras. There are two words which are there, Jina, the person with the eternal knowledge, the most enlightened one, and Tirthankar means the one who bridges the ocean of sorrow and takes you to the other side, the ford builder in that regard. The people who follow the Jina are Jain, but there is a very important understanding which you should again know. Jain philosophy and Jain religion, there are two different founders. Jain philosophy is related to Rishabhnath, who is the first Tirthankar. He created the philosophy. Mahavira, Vardhaman Mahavir, is the one who established Jain religion. Philosophy established by no one else but Rishabhnath. On the other hand, it is Vardhaman Mahavir who will establish it properly as a religion. This is where the first confusion develops. Jainism is more difficult to follow because it is more based on austerity. Karma is problematic, therefore you have to burn your karma. There's also one more very interesting thing, that Jainism is not patronized by the rulers too much because Jainism is uncompromising on violence. It says ahimsa is important. Violence to even the single sensed or the double sensed organism is not allowed. Therefore, Jainism is something which is more confined to the Vaishya community. Vaishyas, they said that the best occupation is not to hurt anyone, and therefore the best occupation which you can follow is basically trade. You don't kill anybody, you don't do any form of violence. That is why. But Jainism is also based on certain philosophies. You have the three ratnas, the three ratans of Jainism, which is right faith, right knowledge, right conduct, which is you have to have faith in the Jina, you have to take his right knowledge, and you have to also conduct yourself into it. But this is why Jainism is difficult to follow, because the Panch Mahavratas as they are called, the 5 vows which we have to take is very, very difficult to follow for anyone. So, do not injure anyone, ahimsa, uncompromising. Do not utter falsehood, cannot say anything as a lie. Do not steal, do not marry, and also don't say anything is yours. And the idea is inner purification through self-penance, through hurting yourself, self-purification through self-penance. That is why Jainism is very difficult to follow. Jain councils in that regard were only 2 major ones. In one, the first set of books were written. Thereafter the Angs were written initially, then the Up-Angs were written. The idea is soul is very, very important in Jainism. Everything has a soul and therefore you cannot hurt it. The nuns and the monks don't even hurt the microorganism. That is why they have a mupatti and they broom before they sit anywhere. For the followers of Jainism, you should not eat or kill anything which has more than 2 senses. This is a very standard thing within Jainism. More than that, Jainism again is a little bit obscure with regards to is there God or not. It also has a problem of how you can say women can get salvation. They say that first women have to be reincarnated as a man to get salvation. Here again we have what is called as the Digambar and the Shwetambar concept, wherein Digambars are the ones who do not wear clothes. Shwetambars are the ones who wear clothes. Based on the great famine in Magad, one set which went to South India does not wear clothes, which is Digambar. The one who stayed back in North India were the ones who Shwetambar. Shwetambars believe that the concept of nudity, giving up everything, makes no sense in that day and age. And women saints are possible in Shwetambar, women saints are not possible in Digambar. One more thing is there are subsects in Jainism. It is better to learn the subsects of Jainism to actually learn the subsects of Buddhism. Buddhism has 18 to 20. Here only it's a list of 5 to 6, which is the Mool Sangh and the Thera, Bis and the Taranpanthi in what we call as Digambars in that sense. And in with regards to the what we today call as Shwetambars, there are 3. One are called Murti Pujaks, who do not worship saints but the murtis of the Tirthankars, 24 of them. On the other hand, you have the Sthanakvasis, who basically worship the saints in that regard rather than the murtis or the idols of the Tirthankars. And you have one which is the Therapanthis. The Therapanthis can be 2. One who do not wear clothes, the other ones who wear clothes, which is white clothes, Shwetambar understanding. There's also the concept of masks. The mask is worn by the Sthanakvasis but not the Murti Pujaks. Sthanakvasi and the Therapanthi have masks but the Murti Pujaks don't. Standard concept, again you will find it in any book and every book. I'm just revising it with you here so that you understand it properly in that regard. Now let's look at the question. 2 questions I have for you. One based on the concept of 2 statements rather, one based on the Buddhism and Jainism together. So consider the following statements with regards to heterodox religions. In Buddhism, though there is no concept of soul, it believes in transmigration of life energy and rebirths. Sthanakvasis believe in praying to saints rather than the idols in a temple. Which of the statements are correct? Again, I want the answer to this question in the comment section, and I will discuss the answer to this in the next video, where we will discuss what is the answer to this question. Do remember, read closely. I want everybody's answer here. Okay. Now moving on to medieval India. Medieval India, I want to discuss 3 major topics with you. One is administration, where I want to discuss Mansabdari, Ikta and Nayankara with you. Then the Alauddin market reforms and Muhammad bin Tughlaq 4 experiments. 3 areas which are very, very yielding, give you a lot of, you can say, questions. Though there are others also, but I think looking at the pattern of the paper and previous year questions, good areas. Mongols is also an important one, but that we can discuss separately also. Okay. Now, when we talk about the administration of medieval India, we have 3 very important concepts. One is called Ikta, the other one is called Nayankara, and the last is called Mansabdari, the most elaborate of all. This is also in chronological order. This is Delhi Sultanate, this is Vijayanagara, and this is Mughal. Now, if you understand Ikta, you'll be able to understand Nayankara, you'll be able to understand Mansabdari. Let me give you a basic understanding here. There are 3 questions based on each one of them. So the first is Ikta. Ikta system is very simple. The Delhi Sultanate, the empire was divided into 2, which is Kharaj and Ikta. This one, or Kharaj, is crown land. Revenue goes directly to the state. Best land is here, Doab region, kept by the state itself. However, because you have to pay your soldiers, you pay them in land grants. Those land grants are called Iktas. If you get a big Ikta, you are called Mukti or Wali. If you get a small Ikta, you are called a Khut or Mukaddam. Iktas are nothing but land grants in lieu of salary or land grants in lieu of service. The idea is, with a land grant coming through, you have certain responsibilities and certain obligations. Responsibility is general administration, the concept of today what we call as revenue administration, collect the revenue. The revenue of that area would be equal to your salary. That is how you get that salary in that regard. And further, you will also do basic law and order activities and also maintain a small contingent, a military contingent. Military contingent in Ikta is not defined. Ikta, it just says you should have some set of army, does not say how many. That is a major difference between Ikta and Mansabdari, wherein military obligation is not properly established. General administration, revenue administration, law and order is very well defined, but not the military responsibility. On the other hand, if the revenue is more than the salary, then you will be then asked to send the excess, because there are accountants which are checking everything. That excess will be sent to the state at the center, and this could lead to further process of decentralization. That is why there are 3 safeguards into it. It is non-hereditary, which means that your son is not going to get it. It is non-permanent, you can be transferred between Iktas. And at the end, also very important point, it is transferable, meaning you will be transferred within Iktas in that regard. So therefore, you can be removed, you can be transferred non-hereditary, only till Firoz Shah Tughlaq. Firoz Shah Tughlaq, in order to appease his nobles, is going to make Ikta hereditary, which is going to destabilize and in a way dilute the whole process of Ikta itself, which becomes in a way what we call as decentralizing. It is a centralized decentralized system. Remember, crown land, the concept of Ikta. Ikta comes with obligations, salary and certain responsibilities with checks and balances also. Now, if you understand this, then Nayankara is very easy. Nayankara system, which was followed by the Vijayanagara Empire, was a photocopy of Ikta, but with 2 to 3 changes which made it an extremely decentralized model. In this, you again have the empire, which is the Vijayanagara Empire. You have crown land, where the money directly goes to the Raya. He gets money, best fertile land here. Thereafter, you have something called the Amra. Amra is the word like Ikta, which is the land which is allocated to Nayaks. Nayaks are nothing but military chiefs. They are in service of the king, the Raya. They are basically feudatories, if you want to call them, because they are local power centers. Nayaks are that ways powerful. When they get an Amra, they are getting it for lieu of service to the state itself. But there is no component of sending revenue to the state on a day-to-day basis or accountants or in a way on a seasonal basis. Rather, the Nayak, because the Raya, the king, has given him a Amra, he gives him tribute. Annually shows his loyalty, goes to the Raya and gives his basic understanding of that I am with you, this is my tribute to you. So therefore, this is the first major differentiation between Ikta and Nayankara, that there is only one-time transfer of money. Amar Amra is given to the Nayak, so Amar Nayaka system. Again, same set of duties, general, revenue, law and order, and also need to have certain amount of army. The basic responsibility remains the same. However, it is a photocopy but with wrong concepts. Here there is no check and balance, wherein it is hereditary, it is more or less permanent and more or less non-transferable. So therefore, there is a formula. ICTA system minus excess revenue transfer, non-hereditary, non-permanent, and the concept of transferability. If you remove that, you get Nayankara system. That is why Nayankara system had a decentralizing tendency and the Vijayanagara Empire disintegrated very quickly once the Raya became very weak. So this is the relationship between Ikta and Nayak. Remember, in Ikta and Nayak, both Nayankara and Ikta, military obligation is not properly specified. That is specified in the Mughal system of Mansabdari. Very interesting system. Now, Mansabdari system, Mansab means rank. Mansabdari now has 2 to 3 aspects, which is you get one rank which is called Zat, the other one which is called Savar in Mansabdari. Zat is your position in the administration according to a numerical rank. 5,000, 2,000, 1,000, 500, 250. This number is immaterial, just that its numerical strength shows the position in the hierarchy. At a certain Zat, you get a certain salary that is fixed according to your Zat. Zat comes from Izzat, which is your position in the army. You can be a Mansabdar, you can be an Amir if you have 2,500 till between 500 to 2,500. If you are 2,500 and above as a rank, then you are called Amir-e-Umda. This is only to tell you where you are, what is your salary. However, in Mansabdari system, you could be a person who has also military obligation, but military obligation is fixed, and that is fixed to Savar rank. In Savar rank, which is Zat rank, will always be equal to or more than the Zat is always more than equal to the Savar. But in Savar, the concept is here the numerical rank or numerical number means something. If it says 5,000 Zat, 1,000 Savar or 1,000 Savar, this means 1,000 horses, 1,000 men. They have to be paid out of the same salary. The state is not giving you anything. But the idea is 1 Savar equals to 1 horse and 1 man. So therefore, what you have in Mansabdari is a combination. You can just be 5,000 Izzat, so therefore you just get a cash salary or some other form of salary. But the idea is you do not have a military obligation, but you could also be 5,000 Izzat, 1,000 Savar, which is 5,000 Zat, which is in the position, 1,000 Savars which need to be there, which is obligated by the state. Military obligation is specified in Mansabdari through the Savar rank. That is why the dualistic rank concept. Unlike Ikta or unlike what we call today as the Nayankara system. Mansabdari, however, has one more subset. A person who has military obligations is obviously given more money. So 5,000 Zat and 5,000 Zat and 1,000 Savar, that second person is going to get more salary because he has to pay from his salary the Savars also. Savars are not paid by the state but paid for by the Mansabdar. But they can be paid in 2 ways. Mansabdar can be paid either in the form of cash salary, then you just remain a Mansabdar, or he could be paid in the form of Jagirs, which is again very similar to the concept of Ikta and Amra. If you get a salary or get the salary in the form of Jagirs, you become a Jagirdar Mansabdar or a Mansabdar Jagirdar. Therefore, every Jagirdar is a Mansabdar, but not every Mansabdar is a Jagirdar, because Jagirs is land grants in lieu of salary. Again, the same concept. If you become a Jagirdar, you are getting your salary in the form of land revenue. You would have to do general administration. You would have to do the law and order, revenue administration. But now your military obligation is decided through the Savar rank. So the Savar rank, if it says 1,000, 2,000, you have to maintain out of that revenue 2,000 or 1,000 Savars. Here again there is check and balance. It is non-hereditary, non-permanent till the end. and it will also be transferable. Only Aurangzeb will mess up the concept of having more Jagirdars than the Jagirs itself. But the idea is the whole empire is divided into Khalisa, which is crown land, out of which Jagirs are not given, and you have Pay Baki, out of which the Jagirs are given to the Jagirdars, Jagirdar Mansabdar, who are then obligated to do. So the basic concept here is, if Ikta had proper military obligation decided into it, it would become Mansabdari. Difference being that not every Iktedar or every Mansabdar in that regard is getting a Jagir. He can also get a cash salary. For example, Abul Fazal, Faizi used to get cash salaries. However, if you're a military commander, you will be given a Jagirdar Mansabdar. So this is where these three together come through. I have three questions for you also here, but I am again repeating, if Ikta minus excess revenue, non-hereditary, non-permanent transferable equals to Nayankara, then Ikta plus Sawar or specified military obligation is there, and the concept of cash and non-cash salary is there, which also is a case within Ikta also, but very well defined here. And if the concept of Zat is added, you get the concept of Mansabdari. Mansabdari, Jagir and Ikta are very, very similar to one another. As I told you, all three related to one another. Now let's take a question and let's see if you're able to remember all of this in the best way possible. So consider the following statements. The military obligation of the holder in the Ikta system is specified. Muhammad bin Tughlaq made the system hereditary in order to appease his nobles. It's talking about Ikta. Which of the following is correct? Comment section, want the answer to question number 3. Then, consider the following statements. The Mansabdars were either paid in cash or land grants based on the salary fixed by the Zat rank. Shah Jahan increased the military liability of the Mansabdars without increasing the compensation by the state. This is a point wherein the concept of Ekaspa, Duaspa, Shiaspa comes through, which I will discuss with you when I will look at these questions in the next session. Thereafter, based on Nayankara, the Nayankara system was designed with checks and balances to undercut the decentralizing tendencies of the power structure. The Rai controlled the temples and the resources in order to consolidate power. This again is based on a certain assumption that you understand Nayankara. Second statement, I want you to see if you can tell me if it is correct or not. Again, want the answer to this question in the chat box. Okay. Now, this was a major topic. 3 different sets of administrative structures which we had to understand. Now we have 2 simple straightforward topics, which is Alauddin Khilji market reforms, the 4 experiments of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. When we talk about market reforms of Khilji, the reason is very simple: Mongol pressure. Because the Mongol pressure from the northeast was very high, you already had the Abdullah's invasion coming through in Alauddin Khilji's period, and he will actually see 3 different waves, Alauddin Khilji, 3 different waves of Mongols trying to enter into India. He needed a standing army. Now the problem is, if you are talking about a standing army, biggest issue is military obligation leads to higher salary payout, which leads to a burden on the state itself. Now, Alauddin Khilji increased the Kharaj area, reduced Ikta, but that is still not enough. Now, in order to have a 1 lakh, 2 lakh standing army, but not create pressure on the treasury itself, you can do 2 things. Either you increase your revenue and give them realistic salaries for example, a city like Delhi, but increasing revenue was not possible and too much would be drained out. He went for what is called as rationalizing the salary in such a way that you reduce the salary but make everything more affordable. Therefore, what he did was he went for price control whilst giving lower salary and making it relevant for a city like Delhi. Therefore, price control was important to give them a lower salary but good enough for a state. Therefore, the real and nominal, there should be no real difference in that regard. Nominal wages could be very high, but real wage could be low. If you're sitting in Delhi, you could be getting 10,000, but if you're getting 10,000 in, for example, Agra, you have more chance of saving in Agra than in Delhi. That is called the problem of nominal and real wage. So in order to make sure nominal and real income are not too, you can say, incongruent to one another, price control was important. Now, price can be controlled at 3 points. 1, at the point of the producer. The other at the point of the, you can say, transport, or the person who basically is the supplier. And the third is at the market level, where basically the retailer can control the prices, or at these 3 points you can intervene to control the prices. Now, Alauddin Khilji, what he did was he made the peasants sell to the state the grains at the lowest price possible, whilst giving them access to the same markets. But it was not a just system. If they were getting 1 tanka for a kg, now half a tanka was given. But the idea was producer has to sell it at the least cost possible. Thereafter, the Banjaras, who were the ones who were traveling between this countryside and Delhi, their families were kept hostage. They were registered so that they cannot hoard the grains, so that they timely come back to Delhi. So there's a good supply of goods and services, specifically the grains in that regard. So he controlled the suppliers also. And in Delhi, the market control was the most important. So in Delhi, what he did was he created 3 markets. One market for grains to everything, from safety pin to grains, everything. One market for what we call as textiles, and one market for the slaves plus the horses and the cattle in that regard. Everywhere what he did was supply and what we call as supply for animals and the production and supply for grains. Everything was very well controlled. So he knew at what cost the state is getting that. He will then, and that is what the state used to do, a central price list was generated by Alauddin Khilji, at which all the 3 markets had to sell those commodities at. For that, he appointed what is called as Shahna-e-Mandi, also called the Shahna. Shahna-e-Mandi, in all three, was going to check if he does not fix the price, but he monitors that all the retailers are selling at the price fixed by the state itself. There were also Barids, who were spies who used to go into these markets and check if the retailers are actually selling at that price or not. If they aren't, they would be thrown out and their license would be taken away. But through the Shahna, Barid and price control measures, from the countryside to increasing the taxes to controlling the Banjaras, his market control measures allowed for him to have a bigger army, did not allow the you can say Mongols to come through, and did not also create more burden on the state itself. And therefore, Shahna-e-Mandi, Barid and Alauddin Khilji's market reforms are considered to be one of the best implemented in that regard, allowed him for better effective control of the Mongols. So I hope that you understand Shahna-e-Mandi, Barids, the 2 words which are related to spies and the in charge of the Mandi itself, and over and above that, how he controlled the whole supply chain in order to make sure that the grains are not coming at a very expensive price. Therefore, the soldiers can, if previously used to get 250 tanka, were given only 200 tanka, but now 200 tanka was more than 250 tanka, because the concept is prices are lower in that regard. Tanka is silver coin and Jittal is copper coin. I hope this is also sorted. Now let's look at a question on this. Consider the following statements. The Shahna regulated, fixed and monitored the prices in the market. The reasons for the market reforms was the rising prices and silver shortage. Which of the statements are correct? Please answer this again in the chat box. We will discuss this question when we will meet in the next session. Now comes the last topic, simple straightforward topic, but interesting in that regard, which is the 4 experiments of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Again, an area out of which questions have come previously also, is generally quite relevant, again linked to the Mongol concept in that regard. Now, the first experiment of Muhammad bin Tughlaq was his distorted understanding of how a state should be controlled. The capital was Delhi. He said it is not in the center of the empire. The reason why it was Delhi was because it was closer to the northwestern sector, so Mongol threat could be managed effectively. He is also one of the only major kings to have lost to a Mongol, Tamrashirin, in which he will allow Tamrashirin to reach till Delhi. That was one of the reasons why he was always obsessed with the Mongols also. But he said that I am not going to sit in Delhi. That is not the center point. His empire extended from the Deccan towards the north, towards the east, towards the west. He said I will find a midpoint, and that midpoint he was able to identify was Daulatabad, or Devgir as it is called. But the problem is that shifting the capital from Delhi to Daulatabad was very, very difficult. There are 2 reasons. One, because he increased the taxes to pay off his army. So there were multiple rebellions which were happening in the Doab region, which he was not able to manage. Further, people were asked to migrate to Daulatabad. Either people did not migrate or died in the process of coming. Daulatabad is much more drier than Delhi, so it was more difficult to stay there, and people had too much inertia in leaving. More than that, whenever he used to sit in Daulatabad, something used to happen in Delhi, so he used to move to Delhi. When he was in Delhi, something used to happen in Daulatabad, and for 1 year he kept on doing Delhi Daulatabad, and that is one of the reasons why Tamerlane also was able to use this confusion and the draining of the resources of the empire by Muhammad bin Tughlaq. That is why after Tughlaq's Delhi Sultanate also starts to decline. But the idea is Delhi to Daulatabad experiment was a failure. He was not effectively able to control from Daulatabad. He gave up on Daulatabad and then shifted to Delhi only as the main capital. There was a reason that was very well strategically located. Most of the threats in India come from the northwestern sector, not from the peninsular sector or from the ports. So this was the first experiment of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. The second experiment of Muhammad bin Tughlaq was actually smart, but not properly implemented. See, during the 15th century, which is the period of the 14th, 15th century, starts in 14th century itself, this 1300 to 1350 period, silver shortage was there across the world, not just in India, but across the world. The answer to that question which came from silver shortage in China, for example, was issuing of paper currency, tokenized currency. But in order to understand this concept, you understand something called token currency and currency which has intrinsic value. Silver and gold coins are important because silver and gold coins themselves have intrinsic value. On the other hand, the token currency is that the paper 100 rupees note, that paper is not worth 100, it is the signature which matters and gives you that 100 rupee value. Therefore, it should be very, very clear in understanding one thing, that the tokenized currency is always not worth the value of the material it is made out of. Now, Muhammad bin Tughlaq had seen the Chinese and even Central Asian empires introduce token currency because of silver shortage. Now, he had two currencies at that point of time, Tanka, which is a silver currency, Jittal, which is a copper currency. Now, copper supply was okay, Tanka supply was less. Tanka's value was increasing. So, what he does is, in order to stop the dependence on Tanka itself, he will introduce one more coin, which is a bronze coin. And he will say that though it is a bronze coin, it will have the value of a Tanka or a silver coin. That is why it has tokenized. A bronze coin equal to a silver coin is tokenization of that currency. And therefore, bronze coin having the value of a Tanka was his solution. Very new concept. Fiat currency is a very, very modern concept. But the problem was that Muhammad bin Tughlaq did not take two things into account, counterfeiting and supply. So what he did was that as soon as bronze was introduced, people started to melt the jittal and made bronze, and counterfeiting was so good that the state was not able to differentiate between a state issued coin and a fake coin. So what will happen is, because everybody was now melting their copper and producing them into bronze, there was a copper shortage, silver shortage already there, copper shortage starts to happen, and too much counterfeiting. Now when this will happen, he would have to decommission, you can say notarize, or in a way remove that currency out of the economy. But the problem is he issued only 50,000 coins. Now he has 1,50,000 coins, which he cannot differentiate. What is the difference between what we call as a real and a fake? So now, because he's demonetized that currency, he has to pay back to the people. Now they are giving counterfeit bronze coins and getting silver. So there was already a silver shortage, copper shortage created because of this, and he is now draining more silver to the people. Therefore, he is draining his treasury also. So he's drained his treasury because he's paying for counterfeited coins. He's also created an artificial shortage of copper. Silver shortage is already there. So this is where he's destabilized the empire economy politically because of shifting north and south, and this is because of the shift in the power structure, and the economy is drained because he's introduced currencies which are not making any sense. Token currency is a good concept, could have been implemented better, but did not happen in that sense. Now, the third and the fourth is even more interesting. Third is called the Khurasan expedition. Fourth is called the Karachil expedition. Now, under the Khurasan expedition, what happened was, he said that the Mongols are coming from the Khurasan sector. Muhammad bin Tughlaq said, we'll capture Khurasan. Now, what he does is, Khurasan is a place. Now he will raise a 5 lakh army, but without market reform, he will pay them lavish salaries. For 1 year straight, he will keep on paying them, but he will not attack Khurasan. Thereafter, he will disband the army and say, we will not attack Khurasan. So in the third experiment, he played with a very big army, did not use it also, and he drained the treasury further. Karachil expedition, he said the Chinese are coming from the Kumaon Hills. I'm going to send 75,000 men to that sector. When he sent to that sector, he did not give them any cold clothes. They will go there. Nobody was coming from that sector. Half of them will die of hunger or from the concept of cold, and only 10 to 15,000 men will come back. So every experiment destabilized the empire. Politically, shift of capital. Economically, token currency. And militarily, Khurasan or militarily and economically Khurasan. Militarily, which is Karachi. So if you look at the questions, you will realize that they can ask you a question based on the same angles, which is, consider the following statements. Muhammad bin Tughlaq shifted the capital to Daulatabad in order to evade Mongol attacks. The copper coin was tokenized in order to reduce dependence on silver for minting. So the copper coin was tokenized in order to reduce the dependence on silver for minting. Which of the statements are correct? Again, I want the answer in the comments box. We will discuss these questions when we meet tomorrow. So on this note, I will end this session. We have covered a lot of interesting aspects. With regards to ancient medieval, where you can get 3 to 5 questions, we have 3 to 4 basic concepts. Buddhism, Jainism, IVC, according to basic pattern, are considered important. In this 1 hour, this is what I felt was the best way of these best use of this 1 hour in that regard. So we've discussed Indus Valley, Buddhism, Jainism. We've discussed all forms of administration. We've also discussed the concept of Alauddin Khilji market reforms and Muhammad bin Tughlaq, what we call as 4 experiments. Together, this whole set is considered to be very important. I have discussed 7 to 8 important questions with you. I will discuss all of them when I meet you for the Modern India session. I will give you the answers also. I will explain to you why also the answers are what. The first thing we'll do in that modern session is this, and then move into modern Indian history based understanding. So I hope that you like this session. I hope this has been useful. It is not for learning but for revision. As it says, conquer prelims. We want you to understand the high yielding areas. And with regards to a static topic where we had so many, a whole world or plethora of things which I could have taught you, I picked up areas which I thought were important. On this note, I will end this session. Thank you. Take care, and bye-bye.